Great. Well, welcome everyone to the Handshake Global Connections Online Forum. I'm here with Diana Soy, who's here to talk with me today about scaling internationally. Something we've been talking a lot about here at Handshake, thinking about how to make collaborations more successful and how to make collaborations from more places more successful. I'm also here with Beth Henneberg, who is a social entrepreneur who works a lot in Tanzania and other parts of East Africa, both on social enterprises around business and technology and educational programs involving technology. So we're going to talk with them about their ideas on scaling. Both of them have a very global perspective. Diana, and I'll let you introduce yourself a little bit more in depth in a moment, but Diana is a consultant in environmental engineering and oil and gas from Kazakhstan originally, and has been doing a global tour of innovation ecosystems with the Tech Women program, primarily in San Francisco, California, where I'm calling from right now. And yeah, Diana, would you like to say a little bit more about yourself and talk a little bit about what you're working on right now?
Hi, Jeremy, Beth. So,
Hello.
as mentioned before, I work as an environmental engineer in the consulting sphere now. And I have a complex background. I started as a financial consultant in KPMG, the international auditing and consulting firm, and then I moved to more specific area of technical consulting. And my experience so far includes like international oil and gas and local oil and gas companies, power generating companies. And I used to study in London for a while, and then my exposure ended with the Tech Women program in the US. In here, I spent like a month with solar company and had a chance to see how they operate here, the everyday routine.
And by here you mean they were in San Francisco.
Yeah, by here I mean San Francisco.
Great. Thanks so much. And Beth, do you want to introduce yourself a little bit more also and talk about your background?
Yeah, sure. So I've mostly interested in ICT for development. I have sort of a nonprofit background doing development projects in East Africa. I've worked in Tanzania doing ICT education for rural nonprofits. I've also worked in the social enterprise sector, so trying to open up markets in different countries to make it easier for people around the world to sell their products. And now I'm interested in ICT for development, but more on a professional development level, bringing people from around the world to network with each other and doing more ICT for development. Sorry.
Great. Thanks, Beth. And Beth has been, for the last year or so, our director of Wandering and Wondering, the name we like to use for our field director for Handshake Network. Well, thank you both for being here. And what we wanted to talk about today was scaling. Why do some places scale more than others? Why do some companies scale more than others? Everything starts as a local solution. Every solution starts as a local solution. But some scale globally and some don't. For instance, the original solution that Facebook was for a college, a single college, to help people connect on a college campus. And that local solution has now scaled globally. And there are certain places where things scale more easily than in others. So we want to explore with you, both of you who have a perspective in multiple markets, about why um, certain places scale more easily than other places, what we can do to leverage different traits of different markets in order to make this a more equitable phenomenon and help more people spread their solutions globally. Um, so I'll maybe just pose that question to start out. Besides lack of capital, um, what is it that helps certain paces scale their companies more effectively, and what discourages it? Diana, do you want to, from your travels right here in Silicon Valley over the last month or so, which is quite good at scaling its solutions globally, what have you noticed there that works really effectively?
Well, I think that in general, of course, human beings all over the world have lots of similarities,
Uh-huh.
and the we still like the social atmosphere, I would say, is the same within Kazakhstan. Like I had some experience with Russia and Ukraine companies, and
Hmm.
the US, it's quite similar. So what would help them to work well most? I think the relationship within company are important,
Uh-huh.
so that when we been working in Kazakhstan and we had CEO or like director foreign from the UK or from the US. What made us motivated if he was in to understand our values, like as Kazakhs, right? As we have some of our own cultural um, likes. For example, like simple thing of having tea together
Uh-huh.
and have some small conversations. That's very important for us, and big deals are happening in the kitchen for Kazakhs. Yeah,
I love
and
that.
notice that that's not the case for the US. The company I was working on, people like really were focused on what were they doing and didn't have much time to just have a small talk with the colleagues during the work job.
Hmm.
But that's different from my perspective, and that's and we as Kazakhs we value those foreigners who spend their time with us as just people, and yeah.
Yeah, so authentic connection is important for collaborating and doing that in a positive way. Um, yeah, I think that's very important, and certainly the more that we can respect each other's culture and understand it, the easier it will be for us to innovate together. Um, I'm curious from what you saw of maybe the startups here or different global companies,
hmm
based on what were things that you saw? What are things that you've seen in your global travels that have discouraged companies from growing and discouraged them from scaling internationally? Whether that's in Kazakhstan or
hmm
things that you saw in your travels.
Maybe that's just the internal people things that like being involved in the decision making.
Hmm.
So if we if we have a headquarter outside of the company and if the locals feel that they have no idea what's happening, and that the decision is they are not participating really in the decisions. That would, a bit make the process more difficult.
Right, and
And
we'll keep
yeah,
ideas from flowing up.
yes,
Um,
yeah.
Beth, in your travels too, you've been working with a lot of startups lately in Uganda and Kenya and Tanzania, traveling around working with some incubators and accelerators also. Um, what do you think is succeeding in terms of the places that you've seen in terms of helping people grow and scale their companies and ideas, and why are more of them not getting outside of the region, or maybe they are? Um, can you venture a guess at what's happening there? Well, it seems like reliable Wi-Fi might
Um,
be one. Okay, there she
Sorry, apologies. My connection is really poor.
no problem. So just for our listeners, it seems like there might be a little bit of lag on Beth's side.
Maybe
So
you could ask that again.
yeah, sure. Um, I was asking, in the place where you've been traveling and your experience both in the United States and in East Africa with startups and incubators, what do you think are things that help a initiative or startup scale effectively and that help
Mm.
them escape out of their country or city of origin? Um, it seems like certain places are better than that in others, and could you maybe give your theory, a theory that you have on why that happens?
Yeah, so I've seen a few startup ecosystems in East Africa, mostly in comparative to Kampala in Uganda and Nairobi. Very different ecosystems, and Nairobi has many more companies that are able to scale. And it's a city that is thought of more as an international city. So there's a lot of idea exchanges happening. There's a lot of people connecting from different places. So people from Nairobi have had more exposure to people from other markets. And so maybe when they're building a business, from the beginning, they have in mind, are keeping in mind to create a product that is relevant in other industries and not just in their certain location. So I think it's kind of a mindset from the beginning that you can scale this to other countries. It's sort of a person or a group that may have had a lot of exposure to an international audience, and so they can think of scaling from the beginning.
Hmm.
And so that's one thing. Kampala has had less exposure to an international audience, and they struggle to scale their, specifically tech companies struggle to create more globally relevant solutions. And also, I think less competition. Less competition in Kampala stifles sort of the innovation that makes things relevant on a global scale.
Yeah.
So having a lot of competition in a certain environment is really important, because then things can compete globally. Companies will then be able to compete globally.
Right, and Diana, that connects back to what you were saying about having, when international companies are working in Kazakhstan, that when they're able to sit down with people and socialize with them, that really helps the ecosystem and improves
Yes,
people's ability to think widely.
Mm.
yes, exactly.
Great. So I'd be curious for both of you, having both of you work internationally a lot, and international relationships are a big part of being successful as a business and an individual. Um, but it's so we have all of these kind of virtual tools for staying connected, but it's difficult to meet new people online, and difficult to build trust through purely a virtual setting. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I'd be curious to hear you guys talk about, just on a personal level, what techniques you use to stay in touch with people globally as you're moving around, and what helps you maintain connections of trust and collaborate effectively. Um, and what tools and techniques you use so that when someone finds you online or is only connecting with you virtually, they still feel that they can trust you and connect with you effectively. Um, Diana, would you maybe what's some things that you use for our listeners?
For I personally think that verbal communication is very important. So if you can organize the Skype talks or just like video conferences, that's what
Uh-huh.
would definitely help, because emails and just like writing stuff is very impersonal.
Uh-huh.
And when you can see the face of your partner, right, even online, that builds trust, I think. And we do lots of online conferences in Kazakhstan, like even within the country.
Hmm.
That's the way we work. So now you have lots of tools like screen sharing, right? And when you can not just send the document via email, but you do screen sharing and you explain how it works.
And what would you say when you're meeting someone
Mhm.
who's not familiar with Kazakhstan for the first time? Is there anything in particular that you do to make them feel comfortable and set them at ease and feel like they're in a, a trustworthy connection?
But we talk only about virtual, right? Online. So
Hmm.
not personal communication,
Uh-huh.
right? Yeah, right?
Well,
I
no,
just
I
want
mean,
to clarify.
or
So
oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, well,
yes.
the things that you use in your work, but that might also include bringing up personal things about yourself in order to make the person feel comfortable. But yeah, specifically in a business setting.
Yeah, no, I mean, so when we want to build a trustworthy relationship, but internationally, so the company won't come physically to Kazakhstan. That's what I'm asking.
Right, if they're not going to be physically there.
They're not physically there. Yes, like I would recommend the video conferences as much as possible, so
Uh-huh.
that the partner could see and how the work is going.
Right,
So visual,
because
yes.
that visual and that being able to see the other person as close as
Yes,
you can get to meeting them.
yes,
Um,
yes.
Beth, what are some things, since you've been traveling around so much lately? What are things that you found that help you stay really connected with people and keep like a lively um, personality and stay present in people's minds, even when you're in areas without maybe a lot of Wi-Fi connection or that kind of thing? How do you maintain your online presence and connection?
Right. Um, I mean, I'm a big fan of personal, in-person connection. So usually my when meeting someone new virtually, um, I feel like conversations always start with something personal, something that is not related to what professional sort of topic that we're about to talk about. Um, and even in Africa, it's rude to just jump into business conversation. it's actually really important that you take 5 or 10 minutes and establish a personal connection um, before going into business. And so actually the personal connection is what I think is most important in maintaining the relationships is um, when if I were to email someone that I've met in the past, it would be, something that was a little bit more personal about what we had talked about. Um, and, this is what I'm doing now. Or maybe I saw something that was related to a person's work that they're doing, and I'll send them a link to something that they're interested in. So I think kind of just as moving around in the world and seeing things that are relevant to people that I know, and actually reaching out to let that person know you're thinking of them in that moment. That's something that's important in maintaining connections, especially when you're so far apart or you come from different cultures and you just want to stay relevant in someone's mind.
Right, right.
Personal connection.
Right. And Diana, you've had a lot of chance in the last few months, few weeks traveling around to make a lot of personal connections. And when we were talking earlier, you're saying that one of the big things you'd gotten out of your travels was energy and desire to work on more initiatives with your colleagues back in Kazakhstan when you got back. Do you want to talk a little bit about that and what your plans are there and why you've been inspired by your travels?
Yes, sure. Like uh, for Kazakhstan, we have very strong like family relationship, I would say,
Uh-huh.
and we are mostly focused on like our relatives or families, and work is just coming on the second place.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, what I've taken from the US that, and what happens, it's just even people are considering it to value the work less than
Mm-hmm.
your family, I would say.
Hmm.
But from the US, I found it that's if it depends really on the personality, and the young generation now becomes really like enjoying job they're doing, right? And they
Uh-huh.
want to maybe invest more time into their career, but then the elders would blame them and say you should not do that. You should like spend more free time with the family. But so coming back to energy I got from the US, I realized that both spheres are important and it's up to us. And if you want to really invest our time and do something great for our society, start a non-profit organization maybe and
Mm-hmm.
help the others, or we just want to excel in the area, yeah, apart from our like regular 9 to 5, 9 to 6 job.
Uh-huh.
That's great. That's great. Again, it's not only for ourselves, but for the same family, for the same relatives, for next younger generation. Because if we will continue to postpone like some additionals, and then progress is just delayed, right? And yes, there are lots of I learned lots of opportunities for
Mm-hmm.
Kazakhstan and for our society, which we can start doing, like very simple one.
Hmm. Like what? What are some of the simple things you?
Like um, there are like international competitions for in technology for children,
Uh-huh.
and so what they need is the mentorship from the young adults to help them within the project, and then they can like see how the world works and through this like, competitions. And I want to involve myself and my friends. I already send them the link so that we can, build a team of 4 or 5 like teenagers and 2 mentors, one mentor, one coach, and work on a project for like app development,
Hmm.
which further will compete on an international level with other teams. So that's the small thing.
Cool. Doesn't sounds like you're with your ambitions that sounds small, but for some of us that would be a big thing, myself included.
Yeah, but that's like the this competition provides all the materials, the learning materials, the technical
Hmm.
support. So what you need is just to take that to explain teenagers how they can use it and motivate them to use their ideas and create something new. So yeah.
Right. It sounds like you see yourself more as a maybe in a translator role and a connector role where you can take these, about these low-lying fruit opportunities so you can help connect people that have that ambition already.
Yes, yes, sure. And like we have very talented, yeah, well, young generation, right? Yeah.
Hmm.
So I mean, talented, like open-minded, come ready for the change because Kazakhstan is different since like it has just 25 years independence from Soviet Union.
Hmm.
While the old system said that you should not be different. Everyone, like the Soviet system, socialist, everyone should be equal. Uh,
Hmm.
the job you do should be average, not good enough, not bad enough, just average. That's the best thing. And now, so the elder generation are up to this mindset. But
Mm.
those who grow up in like Kazakhstan as an independent country, they are striving to change that, and
Mm.
even maybe unconsciously, right? We just start the new initiatives, and we want to be different. We want to like to get exposure to international society. The globalization, of course, helps us with that. So, and
Mm.
I think that Kazakhstan just needs this kind of support that we are doing right because when again coming to that we all need approval, right? And when our approval elder generation is different and we have different paths, then so I think
Diana,
yes.
oh, I'm just curious,
Hmm.
because I think that's very interesting, about what sort of that mindset does to entrepreneurship in Kazakhstan. Like the former socialist, um, now trying to make it in a global society. How do you,
Yes. Hmm.
like, are many people entrepreneurial? And um, yeah, I'm just wondering.
Uh, yes, it's starting now. Really,
Okay.
the entrepreneurs, because if even if you translate the word entrepreneurship into our local language, into Russian,
Mm-hmm.
this word itself has a negative like flavor
Yeah.
because in
Okay.
Soviet time for entrepreneurship you would be sent to prison. That was not allowed.
Uh,
Wow. Can you
Yes,
elaborate on
wow.
that a little bit more?
sure. It's like everything was owned by the state. And if the government would find out that you buy, for example, like, I don't know, a computer and laptop and you resell it with a markup, you would be sent to jail because you can't do that.
Wow. Wow.
Okay.
And that's why the word itself, when you say it's like entrepreneurship equals like trader and equals bad, something. So that's the
Okay.
mindset, which is changing now because like and after the 1991 whole system was like broken and people had to leave somehow and these entrepreneurs started to emerge. Now, of course, it's totally different, but still, you see, even for me, it's more comfortable to use the English word than
Yeah.
its direct
Yeah.
translation.
Wow. That's very interesting to me, especially now because I'm in Tanzania,
Yeah.
which is a former socialist state, and I'm seeing a lot of the same sort of thing just in respect to mindset. And Tanzania is very interesting. Actually, this area I'm in is very interesting because it's very heavily flooded with tourism. It's
Mm-hmm.
between Mount Kilimanjaro and the Serengeti, and so there's mass amounts of tourists, and kind of with that came mass amounts of people wanting to start NGOs and aid organizations.
Mm-hmm.
So this is an area where people were formerly socialist and used to having the government provide everything for them, and now that's gone. But they have sort of this international NGO presence where people are still providing everything for them. And
Okay,
so
yeah.
it's a very interesting, it was like a very interesting switch. And so the mindset hasn't changed, even though I think it's been about 30 years since they were socialist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this
Um,
socialist culture includes that someone has to provide you your
yeah,
basic needs.
yeah. And I think the mindset shift probably comes with a new generation, like it's almost a generation thing, because people's minds they just think what they're used to thinking, who should be providing what.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it almost takes the next generation to change that. Or I don't know. I don't know if
That
you have
I
thoughts on that.
think like Kazakhstan we coped better because we didn't have
Okay.
the NGOs and AIDS coming in the 1990s after like the Soviet Union collapsed. Oh, so we had to start to entrepreneur in order just to provide ourselves. And plus, lots of foreign investments came to Kazakhstan because we had like oil and like other natural resources. And like foreigners, they came with the uh, approach that you work, you have salary, right, and you can have career. So that was like market-based approach. And so I think Kazakhs like coped at least most part of the population.
Interesting. It's so interesting to hear the overlap in experiences in the kind of post-Soviet era. Um,
Yes.
I'd be. What do you think has been really successful in helping change people's mindset? Um, I'm really interested in social innovation because in today's world we have so many free technological solutions for connecting,
Mm-hmm.
and that part of it is solved. We can connect with anyone we want in the world for the cost of an internet connection, which of course
Yes.
is very expensive in some places, but is comparatively cheap. We have access to advanced supercomputing through Google and these kinds of things. So, what are the things you've seen that have helped people change the mindset and helped stimulate that social innovation that's really needed to make these technological solutions work?
Mm.
Does that happen in the family, or does that happen at work, or does it happen from the government, or is it something different?
Well, I think for Kazakhstan that will happen from work, from private sector. The I think our government, hello,
Go on.
our government follows the development in business. So first, because when foreign corporations come, they come with their mindset, and employees are like transformed, because if they want to work, they have to transform
Uh-huh.
and use all this technology for their development. Um, yeah, that's what happens, I think.
Huh. And Beth, same question over to you. Since we have all of these technological solutions for connecting, what have you seen both in the areas you've been in East Africa lately, but also in Reno and in Nevada and California, where you, of course, are from and have spent a lot of time? What's the difference between people who are really able to take hold of these connections and use them effectively, and um, groups and cultures that are kind of stuck and unable to take advantage? Seems like Beth might be having trouble with her connection. I'd Diana, then I'll
Yes,
go back. I'll go back to you.
Yeah, my
Could you talk a little bit
um,
about? Oh,
I
yeah,
think
Beth, go
Beth is
ahead.
back. Yeah.
um, okay, I don't understand the full question just because of the sound, but I have an example of some projects I've seen in specifically.
Okay, well, we'll come back to Beth in a second. But Diana, I wanted to ask you. So far, we haven't really talked directly about investment, um,
Okay.
but I wanted to ask you: has there been much international investment
Okay.
into Kazakhstan, either in the startup scene or from international companies?
Yes, a lot of from international companies, mostly international.
Uh-huh. And are they funding any like local Kazakh companies?
They establish like joint ventures,
Uh-huh.
and mostly come with their already developed strategy, and the top management would be foreigners mostly.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, we have lots of like Turkish companies, because South Korean as well. Mm, well, plus of course Europeans.
Okay, so South Korean, Turkish, and European companies.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. What's your out of those companies, would you think that which do you think interacts most positively with the Kazakh environment?
That's hard to evaluate, I guess. But
Uh-huh.
I can say that lots of Turkish people came with really small startups. That's what I just remembered now. If
Uh-huh.
we, so like private retail started with from Turkish. Uh, then the construction businesses again, like with Turkish, huge Turkish presence. So
Uh-huh.
I think since they didn't have this like influence of socialism on them, and when now borders opened, uh, they just came and were taking advantage. And now we have local Turkish population in Kazakhstan, and so just foreign foreign Turkish people would come, and they would hire the local Turkish and establish just the small businesses.
Hmm. Interesting. Well, we're coming up on the end of our time here, but I'd be curious if you would tell us if you would say a little bit about um, any suggestions that you have from any stories that really stood out when you're in the U.S., something that happened or someone that you met that really inspired you and thought had a really powerful message for our listeners in it.
Well, I met with one lady. She has her own consulting company, and she's with the has some like she's fellow, I think, alumni of Singularity University.
Uh-huh.
And the conversation we had was very interesting since we were discussing the future of the power generation
Uh-huh.
and the technology connected with that. And so, like, I learned that in the US there is a huge hope in the batteries, yeah, and in the in the alternative sources of
Uh-huh.
like energy. And uh, but for Kazakhstan, this is just very far, far away future. So nowadays, our government and we in general, we are concerned about update of in our like all whole power system, electricity generating system, and like foreign investments are coming, like eh, Eurasian Bank of Reconstruction and Development comes with billions of dollars, like ADB, Asian Development Bank, right?
Uh-huh.
Also, like help helps us like providing low interest loans to energy generating companies for them
Uh-huh.
to 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 make uh, to, to make like improvements in the electricity system. And there is a huge program we are working on. And if compared to the US is already planning just to, to get rid of this old facilities and are working on the batteries and alternative sources, while we invest just billions for projects which will like which the investment will return in like 25 years.
Uh-huh.
So that's was very interesting for me, saying that maybe we as a country should think more, and instead of heavily investing in the technologies which might just be expired in 10 years,
Mm-hmm.
which won't be that efficient, and then in 10 years we will need to do investments again to to be in line with the development with the world. And I thought that that's not only applicable to like energy sector. So
Uh-huh.
what I mean is that that like humanity develops on the line, yeah, upward line. And I was thinking whether it's possible for like developing countries like Kazakhstan and maybe others to skip some levels if we already know that what's the point to go 1, 2, 3, 4 if we can go 1, 2, 3 and then go straight to 6.
Uh-huh.
If the technology allows that, it means we don't need to spend time and money and yeah, just to go through all the process if the technology could help us to go straight. And that's the only way development countries can really move from this like name of developing to maybe already developed. Because otherwise, that's like, I feel like Kazakhstan is just running after the countries like or another third world countries, I would call them, yeah, this
Uh-huh.
are running after the developed countries, and they will never catch up because the developed are also not standing on their own uh, on the same place, so they are developing.
Uh-huh.
And the only thing is, but I think that's possible with the technologies.
And
So
where do you think Kazakhstan has an advantage? Where do you think what it could be one of those places where they leapfrog as they call it?
which you mean sectors?
Yeah.
Mm,
If you
I don't
had to
know.
guess, if you're peering into your crystal ball.
Uh, okay. Well, I don't know. Serious. Um, just a guess. No, it's like hard.
Yeah, remains to be seen. Maybe I'm sure it will be you and your colleagues who are able to come up with something if there's anyone.
Yes. Uh,
Great. Well, are there before we get off, are there any last tips or words of advice that you have for our listeners? Or is there anything that you'd like to tell them about that's happening in the next few weeks that they should be aware of?
mm, well, I know that Kazakhstan is planning to host the international exhibition, like we call it Expo 2017,
Uh-huh.
and um, it's like this small version of the World Fair system.
Uh-huh.
S- World Fair, yeah. And the theme of that is energy for the future. So our government is now heavily working with like foreign countries uh, to, and we are welcoming, I know, all the world to Astana, our capital, for innovations within the green energy.
Uh-huh.
And I think that's gonna help Kazakhstan maybe to, how you call it, the leapfrog.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
That's what I think our leaders are seeing now. That
Wonderful. Well, we'll definitely get that information from you before we, when we write this up on our website, so that people
hmm
are able to find out more info about it if they want. Um, and thanks so much for taking the time and joining us today. We're gonna, been recording all this, and so we're gonna put it up on our website so that people can come and hear you talking about Kazakhstan and the conversation ongoing. And please know that you are now part of the Handshake Network, and so anywhere that you are, you must be afforded the necessary benefits from that.
oh, thank you for me. I haven't been told about that before.
We're
So
waiting
okay,
for the podcast to let you know.
okay.
So and we're really trying to build a network here. So let's stay in contact, and part of this is just keeping the connection going and helping bring in more knowledge about different parts of the world so that it becomes just as commonplace to collaborate with someone who is in Kazakhstan or Tanzania or Reno or Silicon Valley as anywhere else. And that way we can really all grow together.
Yeah, thank you so much. That's
Yeah.
really great idea, That's
Yeah, and thank you so much for all the work that you're doing. We're all inspired by your work, um, and we'll definitely include some information about the Tech Women program in our write-up as well, so our listeners can find out about that. So thank you everyone
yes.
for joining us today for the Handshake Global Connections online forum, and we're looking forward to hearing from you next time.
Thank you.